Jun Lin was a man of quiet dreams and unwavering ambition. Born on December 30, 1978, in Wuhan, China, he was the only child of a working-class family. His parents instilled in him a strong sense of discipline, responsibility, and the belief that education was the key to a better life. Lin excelled in his studies, particularly in mathematics and computing, and developed a fascination with technology. He dreamed of becoming a software engineer, building a future where he could support his aging parents and eventually start a family of his own. But Jun Lin's life in China was marked by internal struggle. He knew from a young age that he was gay, a fact he kept deeply hidden due to his family's traditional values and the stigma surrounding homosexuality in Chinese society. Living with that secret created a quiet pressure that built over time. He yearned for the freedom to be himself without shame or fear of judgment. In 2010, Lin made the difficult decision to leave China and pursue his education in Canada, where he believed he could live more authentically. He enrolled at Concordia University in Montreal, one of the city's most prominent institutions, where he began working toward a degree in computer engineering. Though he missed his family, the move was a turning point, his first real chance to explore life as an openly gay man. He lived modestly, splitting his time between school and a part-time job at a convenience store in the neighborhood of Point St. Charles. His co-workers described him as polite, soft-spoken, and diligent. Lin quickly made friends within the local Chinese student community and began to build a new life for himself. In his free time, he enjoyed watching Korean dramas, playing video games, and chatting with friends online. He often walked the streets of Montreal at night, taking in the city lights and feeling a rare sense of freedom. For the first time, he was truly beginning to live. By May 2012, Lin had moved into a small apartment in Griffintown, sharing the space with a roommate. He had recently ended a relationship with his boyfriend, largely due to mounting pressure from his parents in China to settle down with a woman. Though he never had the courage to come out to them, he longed for their acceptance. In search of companionship, Lin turned to dating apps like Grindr and Craigslist, looking to meet other men discreetly. He was navigating unfamiliar terrain, hoping to find connection while avoiding heartbreak or danger. Around this time, he unknowingly crossed paths with a man whose name would soon become infamous, Luka Magnotta. Born Eric Clinton Kirk Newman on July 24, 1982, in Scarborough, Ontario, Magnotta's early life was fraught with instability. His parents' volatile relationship ended in divorce, and he was raised primarily by his grandmother. His mother was reportedly overbearing, and his father was later diagnosed with schizophrenia. Magnotta himself struggled with mental illness and would eventually be diagnosed with schizophrenia as well. But his troubles didn't end there. As a young man, he was frequently unemployed, and by his mid-20s, he had started working as a male escort and adult film actor. In 2006, in an effort to reinvent himself, he legally changed his name to Luka Magnotta. He created an elaborate online persona, fabricating stories about his modeling career, his romantic relationships, and his supposed fame. He was obsessed with celebrity culture and was known to Photoshop his face onto the bodies of fashion models, even claiming at one point to have been engaged to Canadian murderer Karla Homolka. Though the claim was never verified, it exemplified his disturbing fascination with notoriety. Magnotta's digital footprint grew exponentially. He maintained dozens of fake accounts across social media platforms and online forums, engaging in conversations with himself to perpetuate the illusion of a glamorous and tragic life. But beneath the surface, something darker festered. In 2010, Magnotta began posting disturbing videos online, the most infamous of which involved him suffocating kittens in vacuum-sealed bags. The footage ignited fury among animal rights activists and amateur investigators. A group of online sleuths formed to track him down, launching a digital manhunt. They meticulously dissected each video, hunting for clues in the background, hoping to identify the location or the man behind the camera. Despite their efforts, authorities did not intervene decisively, and Magnotta continued to escalate. By 2012, Magnotta was a man unraveling. Financially broke, mentally unstable, and desperate for attention, he began laying the groundwork for his next act, one that would bring him the infamy he had always craved. Jun Lin encountered Magnotta after responding to a Craigslist ad offering sex and bondage. The ad, laced with vague but sinister undertones, was posted by Magnotta. Lin replied, unaware that he was stepping into a trap. On the night of May 24, 2012, Lin arrived at Magnotta's small, sparsely furnished apartment in the Décarie area of Montreal. What happened next would become one of Canada's most horrifying true crime cases. In the early hours of May 25, Magnotta attacked Lin, stabbing him repeatedly with an ice pick and other weapons. The assault was frenzied and deliberate. He bound Lin's hands and performed acts of extreme violence, ultimately ending his life. What made the crime even more chilling was the fact that Magnotta recorded it. The resulting video, titled "One Lunatic One Ice Pick," was uploaded to a gore site and quickly circulated among fringe internet communities. The video showed Magnotta not only killing Lin, but also engaging in necrophilia and cannibalism. He desecrated the body, fed parts to a dog, and dismembered the remains with chilling calmness. The footage had a theatrical quality. Magnotta had arranged lighting, music, and props. It was not a spontaneous crime. It was a performance. Over the next few days, Magnotta mailed Lin's severed hands and feet to various locations across Canada. One package was delivered to the headquarters of the Conservative Party of Canada in Ottawa. Others were sent to elementary schools in Vancouver. Each parcel contained chilling notes written in red ink, taunting investigators and spreading fear across the country. Lin's torso was later discovered inside a suitcase, left beside a garbage pile behind Magnotta's apartment. Police recovered surveillance footage showing Magnotta entering and exiting the building repeatedly with bags and packages, eventually helping identify him as the prime suspect. By the time authorities moved in, Magnotta was gone, vanished without a trace. An international manhunt was launched. By the time Jun Lin's remains were discovered, Luka Magnotta was already on the move. Surveillance footage captured his final hours in Montreal, renting a car, buying airplane tickets, and checking out of his apartment with eerie calm. He had flown from Montreal to Paris on May 26, 2012, slipping out of the country just hours before the body in the suitcase was found. The investigation had now escalated into an international manhunt. Interpol issued a red notice. The world's attention zeroed in on a man now dubbed the Butcher of Montreal. The photograph on the notice was striking: Magnotta in heavy makeup, lips pursed, staring directly into the camera as if posing for a magazine cover. The contrast between his manicured image and the monstrous act he had committed made the manhunt feel almost surreal. In Paris, Magnotta moved between hotels, paid in cash, and used false identities. But his craving for attention betrayed him. He visited internet cafes to read articles about himself, watch news segments covering his crimes, and even check forums where amateur sleuths had long been following his trail. He wasn't just fleeing, he was watching himself become famous in real time. He was captured on June 4, 2012, in an internet cafe in Berlin. The owner, recognizing him from the Interpol alert, quietly notified police. When German officers entered the cafe and asked him for identification, Magnotta initially gave a false name. But when pressed further, he reportedly uttered 5 chilling words: "You got me. I'm the one." Back in Canada, public horror intensified. Details from the autopsy confirmed what investigators feared: Jun Lin's final moments had been prolonged, sadistic, and cruelly orchestrated. Beyond the stabbing, evidence indicated Lin had been tied up and mutilated post-mortem. The necrophilic and cannibalistic elements, first thought to be rumors, were confirmed through forensic findings. There was no doubt, Magnotta had planned every second of the murder. He had prepared the filming equipment beforehand. The tools of dismemberment were laid out in the apartment like instruments in a laboratory. And once Lin was dead, Magnotta posed with the body parts, taking photographs and recording segments not even included in the public video. He then uploaded the edited footage, complete with a soundtrack and visual filters, to a site infamous for extreme content. His goal had never been to simply kill, it had been to create a legacy of depravity. What shocked investigators even more was the sheer number of clues Magnotta left behind, not just fingerprints and surveillance footage, but a trail of vanity-fueled breadcrumbs. In the days following the murder, he created fake online profiles commenting on the case. He posted tributes to himself under different usernames, praising the killer's artistic flair. He inserted himself into Reddit discussions, manipulated Wikipedia pages, and even uploaded morbid fan art. It was as if he needed to be admired for what he had done. During the investigation, police found several of Jun Lin's missing body parts, including another hand and foot, in packages addressed to 2 Vancouver schools. Other remains, including Lin's head, were recovered near a Montreal lake weeks later. The horror of Magnotta's crimes could not be contained by city lines. He had quite literally scattered his victim across the country. Jun Lin's parents arrived in Canada in the aftermath, grief-stricken and shattered. They had been proud of their son, proud of his courage to live openly, proud of the future he was building. Now, they were forced to collect what was left of him from morgues and mail depots. Their pain, broadcast in a foreign language through the cold lens of international media, seemed to deepen the tragedy. The trial wouldn't begin for more than 2 years. In that time, the case became the subject of relentless speculation, documentaries, podcasts, and social media theories. People were drawn to the mystery of Magnotta's mind. Why had he killed? Was it insanity? A narcissistic obsession? A desire to be caught? There were signs that Magnotta had fantasized about the murder for years. In 2010, 2 years before Lin's death, he posted on a forum asking, "What would you do if you were going to kill someone and get away with it?" In another thread, he asked whether a person could post a snuff film on the dark web without getting traced. These weren't fleeting thoughts, they were fixations. As prosecutors built their case, the psychological profile of Luka Magnotta came into focus. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder, he had long exhibited traits of pathological lying, narcissism, and detachment from reality. But was he legally insane? Had he truly lost touch with reality during the murder, or had he been in complete control? Magnotta's defense team prepared to argue that their client was not criminally responsible due to mental illness. They painted a picture of a tormented man spiraling into psychosis, plagued by delusions and haunted by voices. But the prosecution countered with a far more disturbing portrait, a man who had orchestrated every detail, who had reveled in the spectacle, who had used the murder not as an act of madness, but as a stage. In October 2014, as the trial began, the courtroom filled with reporters, spectators, and grieving family. The evidence was laid bare in graphic detail, videos, photos, witness testimonies. The jury heard how Magnotta had seduced Lin under false pretenses, drugged him, tied him up, and murdered him with theatrical precision. The defense repeated their plea for diminished responsibility, but the facts spoke louder. The prosecution made one thing painfully clear: this was not a psychotic breakdown. This was premeditated, intentional, and meticulously executed. As the trial approached its end, one question remained: would justice reflect the full weight of Jun Lin's suffering? By the time Luka Magnotta sat in the defendant's chair, the court wasn't just trying a man, it was dissecting a carefully constructed illusion. He had styled himself as a figure deserving of fame. What emerged was someone who thrived on manipulation, cruelty, and a relentless thirst to be seen. In the final days of the trial, both prosecution and defense sharpened their arguments. The Crown laid out the crime's meticulous structure, from online chats and camera setup, to body disposal and postal packages. It was a sequence of actions that could only be described as deliberate. The defense, meanwhile, repeated their claim that Magnotta was not in control of his actions due to mental illness. The 12-member jury listened intently. For over a week, they reviewed evidence, video clips, and testimony that had shocked the nation. On December 23, 2014, they returned their verdict. Magnotta was found guilty on all charges, including the most serious, first-degree murder. The decision was unanimous. Justice, in its purest sense, was served. But no verdict could undo what had happened to Jun Lin. The courtroom was quiet as the sentence was handed down. There were no dramatic reactions from Magnotta. No appeals to the jury's mercy. He stood still, as if he'd anticipated this moment all along. The law required a life sentence without the possibility of parole for 25 years. There was little left to say. In the months following his conviction, attention shifted to the system's failure to act earlier. Animal rights activists who had raised the alarm years before were finally heard. Their warnings about videos showing the torture of animals had largely been dismissed. They had tracked digital patterns, collected IP addresses, even tied aliases to Magnotta. But until a human life was taken, the warnings went unheeded. These online investigators, often ridiculed for their unconventional tactics, had recognized the escalation long before authorities did. They were not law enforcement agents, but they documented clues with the rigor of professionals. The horrific killing of Jun Lin confirmed their worst fears. The man behind the screen wasn't content with animal cruelty. He was building up to something worse. Long before the killing, Magnotta had created a false mythology around himself. He forged stories of danger, accusations, and victimhood. Through social media and fake accounts, he curated his own legend, casting himself as a misunderstood outsider. Even after his arrest, this delusion of grandeur persisted. He once requested to speak directly to the Prime Minister about his living conditions. He remained preoccupied with how he was perceived, even in prison. The media couldn't look away. Publications ran headlines about his background, his appearance, his prison life. He gave interviews. He got married behind bars to another inmate with a violent past. His name never left the public eye. In doing so, he achieved what he had always craved: sustained visibility. The true victim of his crimes, however, was almost forgotten in this media whirlwind. Jun Lin had traveled from China to Canada to begin a new chapter. He was disciplined, soft-spoken, and academically driven. He studied computer science and kept close contact with his family overseas. Friends described him as respectful and genuine. There was nothing in his life story to suggest the nightmare that would unfold. Magnotta lured him using a dating app. What was likely expected to be a casual meeting turned deadly within hours. What followed was calculated brutality, a crime recorded in its entirety, edited, and uploaded with the express intent of generating attention. The depravity of it stunned law enforcement. The premeditation chilled prosecutors. While his parents had to grapple with unimaginable grief, they were also subjected to a level of public exposure no family should endure. They had flown to Canada to identify their son's remains. They sat through the trial, listening to forensic experts describe each moment of his death in painstaking detail. When the verdict was delivered, they wept not in celebration, but in mourning. In the aftermath, educators, psychologists, and digital experts debated how society had allowed someone like Magnotta to fester online, unnoticed by those with authority. The rise of social media had created an ecosystem where infamy could be manufactured. A user didn't need talent, just the will to shock. In that world, Magnotta had thrived. He weaponized curiosity. He turned violence into performance. And in the process, he left behind irreversible scars, not only on his victims' loved ones but on a society that had been slow to recognize the danger. A documentary would later chronicle the amateur investigators' efforts to unmask him. While their work provided valuable insight, it also stirred debate about ethics, online justice, and how trauma is consumed in the digital age. Critics asked, where is the line between exposing a predator and feeding into their legacy? Years later, the story remains a reminder of what happens when a disturbed individual is fueled by an audience. Magnotta had used the internet as both stage and sanctuary. He crafted identities, evaded scrutiny, and ultimately committed one of the most horrific crimes captured on camera. He never needed a large following, just enough people willing to look. But in all this, Jun Lin must never be reduced to a name on a charge sheet or a face in a news cycle. He was not part of a performance. He was a son, a student, a person with ambitions and a future stolen. This case wasn't about a troubled man who broke. It was about someone who calculated his path to notoriety and built it brick by brick. And while the world debated his motives and mental health, one fact remained: a young man was murdered in cold blood, and the person responsible had every intention of becoming famous for it. Thank you for listening to Crime Echoes with Lewis. For more content like this, please subscribe to my channel.